Everybody, I think we're going to go ahead and start. Everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Well, thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Sasha Willis. I am the Scoutmaster for Troop 3030 out in Paradise Valley with Pinnacle Peak District. And tonight we're going to just be discussing some troop outings that we have had some success with, and hopefully give you guys some new ideas and maybe share some new ideas as well. So if anyone has anything, we'll speak up at the end. So I'm going to start off just really quick by saying our outings are by no means, 100% foolproof. We always have a plan B, but it basically just starts with our planning. Kind of the way we go through our logistics is that we share a lot of information. We do this through our Google Drive folder. And I guess I'll back up a little bit. We have actually 4 units under our charter org. So we have 2 troops, a crew, and a pack. So to try to get everybody, on the same page, we have a lot of information to share. And we tend to use our Google Drive folder to share all this information. And I'll show you how we do that. Go ahead and go into some of the amazing outings that we have done and kind of discuss some of our future plans. And then I'll touch briefly on our driver's packets and permission slips. And these kind of just help us again with our logistics and help in executing these campouts for the youth. And then we'll talk a little bit about some challenges that we face no matter how well we plan. So again, it all starts with planning. And I think for most of us, this starts at the youth planning sessions. This is an example here of one of our youth planning sessions that took place for 2023. Right now, we are currently having 2 planning sessions a year. And this is basically just giving the youth some time to decide as to what activities they want to do, and just kind of lay it all out for the adults so that we can help them plan. They also decide where and when. They give us the months they want to try to do things, and maybe even the where, if they know of the where. But this is the part that really needs guidance. We get a lot of kids who are like, oh yeah, May in Sedona sounds great, 80 to 90 degrees. Let's hike. Are you sure you really want to do that? So again, like this is some of where the guidance part comes in from the Scoutmaster or assistant Scoutmasters. And again, our planning meetings, we have found that it is easier to have 2 per year for the next few years. We were previously doing 1 breakout session or planning session a year. And we just found that was not enough time to plan for things. It seemed that after COVID, we were getting a lot of bookings that were booked out a year or 2 in advance, and we were having a tough time. So trying to secure some of the camp out locations and things like that. So we decided that we were going to do at least 2 a year and try to plan 6 to 12 months in advance. So currently we use our shared Google Drive to share our outings and what kind of the things we want to do or the things we can do or have done with our other units. The Google Drive is really easy to use. We can give access to people. We've shared our outings drive with our DE, so he can go in and see kind of how we've organized things. It's easy for the youth as well. We typically will give access to our SPL for the 6-month term. And they can also go in and look through it and decide, oh, hey, this looks like a great activity to do. Maybe we should plan on this. And that helps them guide the youth as well. Basically, this drive is holding information on our past and future outings. It's organized alphabetically as well as by category. So we have quite a few different categories that we can pick from if the kids want to do kayak, canoe, or water. We have options for that. We have options for backpackers and Philmont prep treks. And we also have options for conservation projects or service projects. So these are kind of double linked. The outings folders also include other information such as maybe receipts for, the last time we went to a specific campground, or maybe what special equipment might be needed for that particular outing. Here's an example of one of the information folders that we use. This was a trip that we created for Arapahoe Canyon, which was a backpacker that some of our youth did a few years ago. And basically we had a couple of ASMs that had some time and were amazing at making this wonderful template. And it includes things like your basic location information, a description of the camp out or the trek. It has driving directions, any extra permit information or special equipment needed. It also can contain the difficulty of the backpacker or the camp out or the hike. And it also has a suggested itinerary. You can kind of see there towards the bottom of the page what has worked for us in the past. Over on the right, we have information about the Scout relevance. So we try to really pair these up with things that the youth want to do, and whether that may be advancing in rank. Is there something, in first class or second class that they can mark off for cooking? Is there a merit badge that could be associated with it? This particular backpacker, we felt, met some of these criteria for the camping merit badge. And also awards, if there's other conservation related awards, or awards for mileage, hiking and that sort of thing, we can put that information there. We also include a map and maybe some interesting information about the area, so that that is available as well. So here's a list of some of the outings that we have done as a troop. And I'll kind of go through some of these. This is by no means our extensive list, but this just might give you some new ideas on things that we like to do. That may, you may think that, oh, hey, that sounds like a fun idea. The Arapahoe Canyon backpacker we did. You do need a permit. It's an intermediate level, so I would suggest it kind of stick for those that might be training for Philmont, or maybe 13 or 14 and above. The barbershop, this was another hike that we've done, or backpacker that we've done. We've done this in the late spring and early fall, and it seems to be a pretty decent hike for all ages. I would rate it as an intermediate, but we had some younger kids that this was their first backpacker and they did quite well. The cabin loop, this is another great backpacker outside of Payson, where we've done in the late spring and early fall. And this one is really nice because you can make this one kind of what you want it. It can be 7 miles, it can be 24 miles, it can be a Philmont training prep, it can just be an out and back. It has a lot of options. Cabrillo Beach, this is actually a scout camp that we have stayed at before. It's actually in Long Beach. And kind of the reason that I mentioned this is it's right down near the Long Beach Wharf, kind of where I believe it's the USS Iowa is, and a lot of scout groups tend to visit the Iowa maybe before they're getting on the ferry to go over to Catalina and Emerald Bay. And Cabrillo Beach actually offers a really nice little beach area to camp. This comes in handy, especially if you're trying to get like the 7 or 8 a.m. Ferry ride over to Emerald Bay. So it was just kind of like a hopping off point for us, but it's nice because it's actually a scout camp, and they do cater to scouts. So Camp Navajo, we've done this in the past for our winter camp, and this is actually up in the up off near kind of close to Williams, up off of the 40, and it's the barracks for I believe it's the National Reserves. And they have a really great place to stay. They can separate males and females if need be, as well as adults. And we kind of just use this as a base camp for, any winter sports or snow sports that the kids wanted to do. Clear Creek, this is another great little group campsite that we've used before, and we're actually going to be using it again in the fall. We've used this for our novice camp. And our novice camp is really a camp that we put on in the springtime for the new youth that are coming in as AOLs. And this is their chance to sit down and work through their scout rank and maybe begin on their tenderfoot rank. The senior leadership all plan this camp out. They plan all the activities and what they're going to do. But this has been a really great group site. It's very large. It has some covered areas as well as picnic tables, and it's right alongside a little creek. So the kids can still hike or play in the creek as they want to for free time. We are going to try it a little bit different this year. We've actually reserved it for a weekend in October, and we're hoping to get some permits for Fossil Creek so we can take the kids hiking down there. One of the youth had mentioned that they really, really wanted to do this hike and thought it would be a great scout adventure. So we're going to give that a shot here in October. Another great camping adventure that we've had that's a little bit different is the Copper State Fly-In. And actually takes place, I believe it's at the Buckeye Airport. And it is an air show, but they also cater to scouts. And I believe they've had someone put on the aviation merit badge every year. So that's a lot of fun too. A little bit different for those interested in airplanes. Another great camp out we've participated in is called Dogtown Lake. This is also up near Williams off of 40, kind of in the back a little bit off of a dirt road, but it's a nice little lake. It has organized campgrounds with a host. We have rented the canoes from council and brought those up there and have done a kayak and canoe merit badge. There's also fishing that you can do at the lake. And it's also not too far from the lava tubes near Flagstaff. So we kind of incorporated all of those activities into this one camp out. And I think the kids had a lot of fun. I think you always know it's a good time when, before you hit the road, they're asleep in the back. So another really great place that we've camped at before is called Don's Camp. And this is actually out in the Superstitions. Kind of at the base near Peralta Trailhead on the south side. And I personally really like this camp for lots of reasons. One, it is close to the Peralta Trail, so you can get a nice hike in there. And that will meet I believe it's the camping merit badge with elevation for your hike. So we do that when we camp there. But it also has a very interesting layout at the camp. It does have working restrooms. It also has a gate, so you're away from others, and you can stay in the camp pretty securely. It has these interesting. They're very hard to explain, but these very long cement, almost table-like structures that are there. There's about 4 or 5 of them, and it's a great place to set up a kitchen. For the youth. So we've been incorporating our Iron Chef cookouts when we go here. So again, it takes some planning because it's at the Superstitions. You definitely don't want to go when it's too hot. But it's a really neat little camp area that's kind of different and off the beaten path. Another really interesting place that we've camped at before is called the Eldon Pueblo. And this is up in Flagstaff. And you can search it. It's actually an archaeological site, and they actually put on part of the archaeological merit badge. The kids kind of get to learn about some of the things that have happened up north in terms of civilizations, and they also have a private little area that you can camp out in. So you would be able to just contact them and ask for information. But for those that are interested in that type of a merit badge, we had a big group that went up, and I think all the kids had a really great time. They got to sift and learn about some of the old pottery, and that was really neat. Another great site that we've used and that we'll be using probably towards the end of summer this year is Full Hollow Lake. And that's up off of 260, kind of on the way to Sholo. And they actually, for the summertime, they actually have a little kayaking place that will rent kayaks out. It's a little difficult sometimes to get campsites together. They do book up very quickly because it is on the lake, but it's a nice little lake, and it's not far from town, so it's easy to get to. Fort Tuttle is another one that we've used, and we've done biking as well as coach courses there. And that's always a lot of fun. We're going to be doing that, I believe, in September. Specifically, the youth wanted to do the zip line, so that should be interesting. Another great site that we've used before is our Garden Valley Loop and First Water in the Superstitions. This is near kind of out past Apache Junction. We've used this as a beginning backpacker because there's lots of different trails and loops that you can configure depending upon your age group. Again, I like it as a beginning backpacker, but you can make it into an intermediate or even a difficult one as well. And a lot of really good places, flat places to pitch tent. The site that we've used recently is the Granite Mountain Hot Shots Memorial. We've done this where we've had some dispersed hiking or dispersed camping, but we've worked in the merit badge for hiking, and that seemed to be going really well. Again, this is like one of those areas where you don't want to plan during the summer or later in the spring because it gets pretty hot up there. But it was a really nice camp out for our boys. Another great area is Horton Creek up in Payson. We used this as an intermediate backpacker before. Mingus Mountain in Jerome and Prescott. So this is a great little spot if you can get a campground spot, or you can do some dispersed camping. We've done this a couple of times, and for the boys, we actually wound up planning it as a Halloween adventure, and they were able to go into the town of Jerome and take part in some of the mining ghost tours, which they got a really big kick out of, I think. So just something kind of unusual that's not always thought about. Another camp that we've utilized is the Moki Campground, and this is also off of 87 outside just north of Payson. It's near the Blue Ridge Reservoir, and this was a really nice family campsite. It does back up kind of to the AZT, so you can hike a little. The reason I really liked this one is just because the group sites were very spacious. We had a couple of different units visit for family camp, and we were all dispersed in different little areas, but we were still able to kind of come together in the center and have activities that some of the youth ran, which was really fun. Another great area that we have recently gone to is the Nordic Village in Flagstaff. And I hear that they are actually becoming very scout friendly. They've had they've had an increase in the scout groups that have gone up here. We wound up doing cross-country skiing through them, and that was a lot of fun. We had girls that had never been on skis before, and they wound up doing a couple miles on their cross-country skis. But they provide the skis and instruction as well as the trails, and they're nicely groomed. So if you can hit them during snow time, that was really great. We wound up actually staying at Camp Raymond. We rented out a cabin there, and it worked out pretty nicely. It was about a 45-minute drive into town, and keeping in mind that sometimes those back roads to Raymond aren't the best during the winter, but it was pretty easy otherwise to get Nordic Village to cater to the scouts, and we really enjoyed it. They were really nice and helpful. Trail in Sycamore Canyon. This is another really great backpacker that we've participated in. It is difficult sometimes to find a really good spot to pitch tent, but the further down you go, the better it becomes. And the scenes are just beautiful down there. Usually you get some river crossings, so you get kind of the gamut of hiking through rock as well as water. Pepper Sauce. So this is actually a group site that we used recently as well, where we did some caving. There is a group site there that is, I think it's run by the state or the county. I'm not 100% sure. It's actually on kind of on the north side of Mount Lemon. You do need a guide to go into the cave and do the caving part, but if you can secure one, it's pretty great because they bring all the equipment and you kind of just show up. You can stay at the campground and then it's a short drive up to the cave to do the caving. Picacho Peak, we've done the group site there and that is gorgeous as well, of course, for the hike. But we've also done this as our novice camp. It was a pretty spacious site. We did ours in February and it was actually still a little cold and rainy, but we had quite the adventure and I would definitely do that one again. That was a lot of fun. The Verde River Kayak and Dead Horse Ranch. So we actually, our boys did this camp out, I believe it was last year. They stayed at Dead Horse Ranch and then wound up finding a kayaking group from the Verde River that they were able to put kayaks in. And they were able to transport them, kayak down the river and then transport them back. And they said they had a blast. It was a really great time. So that's a little something unusual as well. White Tanks. So this is a group site that we've used before out in the White Tank Mountains on the West Valley. And I like this one too because it also has some good room to do an Iron Chef or a Dutch oven cook-off. Just lots of space and just kind of spread out, has its own private bathroom in the group site. And another area that we've done that I would love to go back to is Whitewater Draw. And this is actually down south. It's close to McNeil, Arizona. And it has a wildlife refuge area, which is truly beautiful and fascinating. If you have youth that are really interested in bird watching or some of the migratory birds that are going on, it's a great place to we also had done a Tombstone day trip incorporated in it, just as something different. Probably really didn't have anything to do with Scout rank or a merit badge, but it was just something interesting that the kids wanted to try and do. So just some other ideas. And then I was going to show a couple of our pictures from recent campouts that we have done. This is one of the pictures from the group site at Pepper Sauce. We had some wild turkeys running through our campsite. That was quite interesting. Here are our tents pitched up near the Eldon Pueblo. We had a beautiful sunrise in the morning. More of our kids at the Eldon Pueblo. Here they are, the archaeologists are teaching them how to dig. And they were finding little shards and things like that of pottery. They were pretty excited. It was a lot of fun. Here's another picture of the caving expedition that kind of went along with the Pepper Sauce caving. And then a picture of our girls out on a backpacker out in the Superstitions. We got rained on pretty heavily at this last backpacker. I think we had pretty close to 12 hours of rain. Here's some of our girls out on a canoe trip from the Hoover Dam. And that's always a really great trip. I know lots of Scout units actually do this, but that's always one that I've remembered as being a lot of fun. Here's the Nordic Village ski trip that I was talking about. So we had a pretty large group, adults included, and you can see all the girls here with their skis. I think everybody fell down at least once or twice, but they still had a great time. They're still smiling. Here's one of the Scouts out in the middle of a field. She decided to watch the sunset while we were there. And then we have a picture here of our group out at Oak Flat Campground, which is near the Boyce Thompson Arboretum. And if any of you have been to this area or been to the Arboretum, it's beautiful. They are very much into conservation of state wildlife and plants, flora and fauna, and that sort of thing. We actually wound up camping out here at the Oak Flat. campground and doing a service project for the Arboretum itself. And in turn, they actually wound up giving us a tour. And I think we got in for free. It was pretty amazing. The girls had a really great time. You can see here they're replanting some of the plants for the Arboretum. They were given certain guidelines, and that was kind of fun. So not only did we get to camp and learn about some of the flora and fauna as part of rank, but then we also got some conservation time as well. Here's our troop getting ready to enter some of the lava tubes in Flagstaff. This was a pretty great trip. Girls had a ton of fun. First caving for some of them. For the girls getting ready to take out some of the council canoes out on Dogtown Lake as they were working on their canoe merit badge. And there they are out in the lake having a great time. This camp out here was actually one of our spring break trips. It was a 5-day trip, I believe. The troop wound up combining with some of the boys. So we wound up actually going as a crew instead. And we wound up going to the Utah pink sand dunes, which is beautiful. I definitely do not recommend going during spring break because, as you can see, there is still snow on the ground. It was very cold and very windy. But our girls are all smiles. They wound up going to Pariah Canyon and visiting Horseshoe Bend as well. And here you can see they are skiing or sledding or snowboarding or whatever they were doing down the dunes. It was an amazing trip. They had a really great time, just very cold. As I was talking earlier about the Dons out at the Superstition area, so here you can see we were getting ready for a Dutch oven cook-off, and you can see these very unusual concrete slabs that are out there, and they're very long. I would say close to maybe 15 feet. You can't tell from this picture, but the youth here are getting ready to put on their Dutch oven cook-off, and this makes a really great place to do that. Here's the view from the Dons looking into the Superstitions. And then some of our troop at the top of Peralta Trail, which was and always is a fantastic hike. So we'll just discuss some of our future outings that we have planned. Coming up next in for August, I think I talked about it earlier, we have our Fool Hollow Lake with kayaking activity. So it should be a nice time of year to kind of get away from the valley heat and be up in the nice cool pines. In September, we have our Fort Tuttle up in Flagstaff, where we can do cope and or zip line depending upon our age group. So this should be a good time. We've planned it for the beginning of September, so hopefully it's not too cold in terms of using those zip lines. In October, we're headed to that Clear Creek group site, and we'll participate in the Fossil Creek hike. And in November, we have our White Tanks group site, where we will do our Iron Chef and a short hike. Kind of just a word about our Iron Chef. I don't know how many of you visited Geronimo this year for summer camp, but they had a very similar cook-off during some of their summer evening programs, which was awesome. It was so much fun, and that's kind of the same thing that we do with our patrols and in our troops. We give them a very unusual list of ingredients and say good luck, and then fingers crossed for that you don't actually have to be a judge, but sometimes what goes around comes around. So in December, we'll be doing our beginning backpacker, probably out at the Superstitions at First Water. Sometimes this gets a little bit chilly, but it's usually not too bad if as a beginning backpacker. Coming up next year, in January, we have our traditional lock-in, which I kind of include as a camp out, but it's only a one-nighter. And it's also more for recruiting purposes. We will also probably have a snow camp as well. I did not add that in there, unfortunately. Our February is not yet booked. The girls couldn't decide yet what they wanted to do, and so that will be coming up soon. In March, we actually run a patrol choice camp out or outing. So the patrols get together and they decide as a patrol where they're going to go. So usually, they all go to different spots, which is kind of fun. Then they kind of bring back their stories, and we see who had the most activity or had the most fun. In April is our novice camp. So I'm hoping we'll try someplace new this year. We'll see what the girls want to do. This past year we just got finished doing our novice camp at Geronimo. It was a little cold. I think we got down to 28 a couple of the nights. And so for some of those novices that are 11 and 12, not the ideal first camp out, but I think they made the most of it. I still think they had fun. And then in May, we usually plan for our family camp out. So all of our units get together and decide as a unit, as a big unit where, where we might be able to camp with family. So that's kind of fun. Our summer for next year, our plan is, and we kind of rotate what we do, but our summers will always include one high adventure, one in-state, and then one out-of-state. So the girls had already picked for next year our Northern Tier adventure. And then we'll do Geronimo, and for the out-of-state, they decided on doing Emerald Bay this next year. This past summer, for 2023, we actually don't have an out-of-state camp out, but the year before we wound up doing Fiesta Island in San Diego, which I heard was also a lot of fun, being down by the water and on the bay. So kind of just a quick synopsis about some of the things that work for us really well. We implement permission slips and driver's packets. And the permission slips we actually have, you can kind of see an example here. These are basically just allowing the youth to go on whatever outing is coming up. It has the signature of the adult and their emergency contact information for very quick reference. This also comes in handy for our outings coordinators when they are putting together our driver's packets. And basically our driver's packets are kind of meant to be there as informative documents that are put out a couple of days before the outing or the camp out. The driver's packets, we've kind of added a few things over the years, but it kind of summarizes some of those things that you saw in our information folders. It has the dates that we're going to be attending the camp out or the event, the location and the website in case someone needs that, as well as GPS coordinates and written directions. You can kind of also see over there on the second page, we have a table. And this basically is listing our drivers and which scouts are going with which driver and how many in each car. This helps us just kind of discern where everybody is at all times, what's a quick cell phone number in case we need to get a hold of someone, and also kind of breaks down our female adults versus male adults, depending upon what group is going, either boys or girls or both. It also contains our emergency information, so the nearest hospital and urgent care, and any special gear that might be needed for this particular event. One thing I've started to do recently is also include just a little snapshot of the weather, if I can get it, for the area for a couple of days before. Again, so that this helps the scouts plan the type of gear that they're going to need. So some of the challenges that we've faced in the past and kind of sometimes continue to face is basically just keeping our outings and our files updated. Currently, we have one ASM in charge of outings with like a half of another ASM that's helping out right now. So finding that consistent assistant Scoutmaster to help implement and just deliver this part of the program has been a little bit of a challenge. Another challenge that I've seen is youth involvement. I would like to have the youth involved more in the logistics and the planning, other than just telling us what they want to do. But sometimes it's difficult in terms of reservations. We don't want them necessarily having to handle money. That's something we want to take off their plate, not worry about. But I would like to try to get their involvement in some of these other items. So something kind of that we're working on. Also scheduling, and I mentioned this, I think at the beginning, we're really having a tough time getting some places booked, which is why we're having our planning meetings twice per year now. Some places are booked out over a year or more, which I'm still shocked to find. And so when you're having to plan out that far in advance, it's also really difficult to estimate your future number of youth. We've recently actually doubled the size of our troop in the past few months. So moving forward, I'm really hoping that some of our camp outs, we have enough spots for everyone. Otherwise, we might have to limit going, and I always hate to do that. I definitely don't want to tell a youth that they can't go because we don't have enough room. That just would be horrible. I want everyone to be able to have that chance. So sometimes that's just one of those things that's difficult to anticipate. Another item I've kind of run into is that it's not always representative of all the youth and what they want to do, which is why it's just so important when I'm stressing to them, you need to be at planning meeting. I can't make it mandatory necessarily, but it's super important that you, if you want to say in what you're going to be doing or what you want to do, what merit badges you want to earn or what rank advancement you want to incorporate in your outings, it's really important that you're at the planning meetings. So stressing that to the youth is really important. And so that's all I really have tonight. I hope I've been able to give some good ideas and hopefully, we can share any of those things with each other. But that basically concludes my part of the presentation.